have a really amazing story to tell you guys today. And how many of you know what Snopes is? Anybody ever heard of Snopes? What's Snopes?
And if you hear a story and you're not sure if it's true, you go to Snopes.com and it will tell you if it's a rumor or if it's a lie or if it's true.
You mean everything you hear on the internet is not true? It's a way to check it out. So Snopes checked this out and they said it was true. Plus, I know some other people who actually have sort of seen part of this, and I'm going to go see this one day. It's on my bucket list. All right, well, we can turn that off for right now, and we'll turn it on a little bit later. Just hide it or something. Okay. A long time ago, in the 1800s, in about 1870s or something like that, there was a group of people. They were a Methodist, a Protestant Methodist church, and they lived in North Carolina, and they decided they needed a new church building. And so they wanted this new church building, and they really, they worked and they worked and they saved and they saved, and they finally got enough money that they had enough money to buy a piece of property. And they were so excited. Now, do you think this is in God's plan for people to have churches, to worship together?
Where is it on?
And so do you think God was excited that they wanted to build this church? I think he was too, and they were too. So they looked all around the town, and this was in Swan Quarter, it's called. It's a little town called Swan Quarter. And they looked around, and there was this piece of property that was sort of up on a little bit of a rise. It was up on the hill. And they says, that's where we want to build our church. It's so cool. It won't get flooded because where they live, it's close to the ocean. When they have big storms, sometimes flooding would happen, and they didn't want to get flooded up. So they said they're going to buy this property. So they found out who owned it. And the guy who owned it, his name was Sam Sadler. So they went up and they walked on and they knocked on his door and they says, Mr. Sadler, we would like to buy this piece of property that you have up there. You're not using it. What do you want to do with it? Oh, well, we're the Methodist church and we want to build a church there. We've saved money and we're ready to build and we want to do this. Are you nuts? I don't even like Christians. I'm going to put something on that property that's going to make me money. And believe me, you Christians won't make me money. Nope, not interested. So they thought, how about if we save the entire amount to build the church and to buy the property, and if we work really hard and we showed him cash, maybe then he'd do it. So they all got their money together and they worked really hard and they saved some more money and they went and they knocked on the door and they says, Mr. Sadler, here's all this money for this property. Would you sell it to us? And he looked at him and he says, you wouldn't make me enough money. I don't even like Christians, so I'm not going to sell it to you. Well, they didn't know what to do. And they knew God wanted them to have a church, and so they says, well, I don't know what we're going to do. So somebody says, I have a piece of property that's behind a fire hall over here. Why don't I give that property to you and you can build a church that'll save you money? So they went over and they looked at this property and it was sort of in a low spot. It wasn't on a high spot. And they thought, if that's all we can get, that's all we can get. We'll take it. So they took and they built the church and they built this nice church and you can see it. This is what the church looks like. It's got bricks on it now. So it was a nice sized church, but it was more wood than it is now. This is the original church. So they took and they built this church on this nice spot, and in September 16 of 1876, they dedicated this church. Now when you dedicate a church, that means everything is paid for and it's free and clear, it doesn't owe any debt. So they had the dedication service for this on September 16, 1876. What do you think happened September 17, 1876? A very famous hurricane came in. And this hurricane came in, and where this church was, it was 5 feet of water. And so the church lifted up, because they didn't have cement forms and stuff, it wasn't cemented down. The church lifted up, and it started floating down the street. And it was floating down the street, and it got to the general store, and people are watching this, and it got to the general store, and they says, let's catch it, otherwise we don't know where it's going to go. And so they put some ropes around it and tried to catch it and stuff, and tied it to the general store, and it just kept floating, and it just kept floating. And you know what? It went another block, and then it turned the corner. And they thought, what? And it like had a mind of its own. And it turned the corner, and it floated 2 more blocks. And then it turned the corner again, and it floated up a little bit. And it came to rest, and it just sat there. And people says, what on earth? And so what happened was, when all the flooding went away, this church landed right in the middle of Sam Sadler's property. Where they wanted to build it in the first place. And Sam Sadler came over there, and he said, okay, you can have it. And he did give them the deed to the property as well. So, and they have a story, they have a sign here. They said they called it the Providence Methodist Church after that. The church that was moved by the hand of God. And that church is still in existence today. Now, and Grandma Sharp lives in North Carolina. She lives about 32 miles from this. So if I ever go to visit her, I'm going to go see this church. So, is there anything too big for God?
No.
Do you know where it says if we had enough faith, we could move mountains? You know, these people, they had faith and they built a church because they knew God wanted them to. And God had a way to move that church exactly where He wanted it. And it still today is there as a reminder that God's hand is not short. There is nothing God cannot do.
Amen.
And we only think of little ways to get things done. And God has 1,000 ways that He can make things happen, where we can only think of 1 or 2. So should we ever not trust God to look after us and take care of all our big problems? He can do it. He can do it so easily and so wonderfully. So let's always remember, He's the one where we put our trust.
Amen.
Thank you.